My house is... Just pretend like you can't see behind me. It gets worse. It doesn't even matter like what background I try to use. It's just, my house is destroyed right now. Okay, so I just wanted to record myself making sourdough bread, and I just started and then forgot that I was supposed to record it. So I'm gonna show you what I've done so far. I've only just started, so. Okay, so this right here in the bottom, this cloudy looking stuff is my sourdough starter. I put 150 grams. I've got my thing sitting on a scale. 150 grams of starter, 25 grams of olive oil, and 250 grams of water. This is the rest of my sourdough starter. I'm going to feed it and put it back into its container. So I'm pouring, in order to feed my starter, I'm pouring a half a cup of water. Mix that in. There's plenty of sourdough starter recipes online. It does take about a week in order to get your starter ready to be used. All fed and mixed up, I'm gonna put it back in its container. This is how I store my starter. You just stick it somewhere where it's pretty warm if you're gonna use it again. And then if you're not gonna use it again pretty soon, then put it in the fridge and store it there. Again, you can look up kind of sourdough starter recipes online. Okay, so now that that's kind of mixed, I'm going to add my salt and my flour. So I'm gonna turn my scale back on. I'm doing 10 grams. So I've got to kind of watch this carefully so I don't overdo it. Ah! Okay, that's fine. 11's close enough. And then the next step is to add 500 grams of flour. So I'm gonna, there we go. Getting close. There we go. Okay, once I've kind of mixed it with the fork to this consistency, I use my hand for the rest of it because it's just like too difficult. Also, it's kind of fun to like squish it. Okay, so here's my dough. It kind of feels like after you get over the initial like sticky, messy feeling, it starts to feel kind of like dry and like a little rough. And then I'm going to cover this and let it sit for 30 minutes. You want to keep it somewhere warm, so I'm gonna put it next to my fireplace. Set a timer for 30 minutes. In about 30 minutes, I'm gonna start pulling and stretching the dough, which is supposed to help like activate the gluten and give the bread like a better build. I didn't do that last time because I forgot and then I went sledding. Something that I've realized though about sourdough is that once you have your sourdough starter, honestly, it's super easy. It's just like there's a lot of waiting for dough to rise, and then the actual baking of it doesn't take that long, honestly. So yeah, it's awesome. Hopefully I can get my sink cleared out. I don't know how this happens. It will be perfectly clean. My whole kitchen will be perfectly clean, and then within just days, an explosion. Also, my cat knocked over some of my plants, so there's dirt all over my counter too. All right, so it definitely looks like it got bigger. Just a little bit. Ooh, and it's sticky now instead of like kind of crusty. So yeah, I'm going to kind of stretch and fold, which is gonna be really hard to do with one hand, I realize, but you stretch, kind of fold it over, go to this side. and then I'm gonna recover it and set another timer for 30 minutes. Our 30-minute timer just went off, and I'm happy to report that our kitchen sink is a little less full. And those are scraps for the chickens, in case you're wondering. All right, here is our dough 30 minutes later. You're supposed to get your hand wet so that the dough doesn't stick to your hand. And again, 30 minutes. I think I'll go drop these chicken scraps off to the chickens. It's pretty, huh? Borrowing Roan's snow boots because I'm wearing a skirt and his come up to my knees. It's a party. Hey, Toast. Look at how much my starter has risen. We've decided that we've named our starter Fred because Fred rhymes with bread and Fred is for bread. These are the things that I think about now. Sourdough and wondering whether or not I should have picked up diapers yesterday at Costco. Ooh, she's getting nice and fluffy fat. This is so hard to do one-handed. I think this is the third pull, so we've got one more, which means we're gonna let it rise again. Okay, last timer just went off. Okay, I am supposed to now just let this rise some more. It's already gotten so big though, I think I kind of need to transfer it over into another bowl really quickly. I'm gonna go ahead and dump her in here. Come on, bro. Woo. Okay, and that way I can cover this again. So the thing about this part of the rise is that like it can take anywhere from 2 to 3 hours to 13 hours. It just kind of depends on how cold your house is and where you've placed the dough to rise. So I put mine back over by my fireplace and I'm just gonna let it rise, and I'll probably just check it in an hour. If it doesn't look like it's doubled, then I'm just gonna leave it for longer. You just kind of keep an eye on the dough. You're supposed to cook your sourdough bread in a cast iron pot with a lid. And I have this one right here and this one here. If you want to, you can cut your loaf in half after this last 30 minutes here. You can cut it in half and then shape it and cook it into separate loaves, or you can just keep it all together, which is what I'm going to do, and cook it in a bigger pot. These two are enameled cast iron pots, and they are on sale at Costco right now for 70 bucks for the pair of them, which is what you'll usually pay for just one cast iron pot. So there's a tip for you if you're in the market for one. I was really excited to see this deal. This one right here is a 7-quart, and this one's a 4-quart. You want to choose one that's just a little bit bigger than your sourdough bread, because the sourdough is going to get a little bit bigger when you're cooking it. And my loaf is gonna fit a lot better in this one than this one. So it's always better to be a little bit bigger than a little bit smaller. You're supposed to cook them in cast iron pots with a lid because the steam is a really crucial part of cooking sourdough bread. Don't ask me why, it just is. Science, food science. Okay, I don't know if you can tell from this video, but it has literally risen to where it's touching the top of my saran wrap. So I don't think there's any way it's gonna get any bigger. And I'm going to shape it. Stick it inside of this guy. See if I can balance this without, look at this. It's so Ooh, it feels warm. Like you can feel how warm this dough is. I really want you to be able to see this, so I'm gonna try and do it one-handed again, but we'll see how that goes. Really quick, another thing is lining your cast iron pot. I've used parchment paper. You can also use cornmeal and just sprinkle cornmeal on the bottom of it. It's just so that your dough doesn't stick to the cast iron. Okay, so this is called the envelope fold is what I'm going to do. So you take the top half, you fold it to the middle, like that. And you take the bottom half, you fold up. And you take the side, fold in. The other side, fold in. So I just did the envelope fold. You kind of like tuck it in, and then scrape it, turn it over. Okay, and then you're gonna just kind of like tuck in the sides a little bit to make it like a perfect little ball. Tuck, tuck, tuck. And then I'll show you guys from the top what it looks like. Okay, here it is from the top. Nice, perfectly round little ball. Here's what it looks like before its last rise. I'm going to put the lid on and set another timer. Alexa, set a timer for 30 minutes. Okie dokie. Look, it rose again. Thank goodness. All right, so the next step here is I am going to score it. I really want to do the pumpkin shaped sourdough bread again. And so, but with a little bit more detail this time. If you saw the sourdough bread that I posted on my Instagram, it was shaped like a pumpkin, and I just did like kind of minor scoring on it. Scoring is when you cut little shapes into the bread so that the steam can escape. If you don't score your bread, it will explode and it won't look beautiful. But if you score your bread, you can kind of like make it look artsy. And so, yeah, I'm going to show you how I made the pumpkin shape. And this time I want to add just a little bit more detail with my scoring. So I took this kitchen twine and laid 5 pieces on this parchment paper, and now I'm going to just tie them very gently in the middle. Here is what it looks like from the top. I saw another trick where people kind of sprinkle flour over the top to kind of give it like even more of a difference between where you've scored and where the rest of the bread is, where the rest of the crust is. So I think I'm gonna try that too. You wanna take like a really sharp knife to do this, because it's really hard to cut the dough. I almost feel like this is like too much. Whew. I'm not sure how else to get the the flour off except for blowing, because I definitely put too much on there, I think. I don't know. Okay, now I'm going to stick this back in the pot. I preheated my oven to 450 degrees. Feels good. What you're gonna do right before you toss it in the oven is lower your temperature to 400. You only put it in for 20 minutes with the lid on, then you take the lid off and bake it for another 40 minutes. You smell it?
my gosh, I'm so excited.
Something else I forgot to mention, there's a trick to get the crust like super, super crispy. And it's the last 10 minutes, you just kind of crack your oven door open. And that's supposed to help like dry the crust really well. So then you get like a good, you know, crunchy good crust. So I've got about 10 minutes left. Just gonna crack the oven like that. You guys, it looks so good. I mean, it could definitely be better, but I love it. Look at it. Oh my gosh, I just pulled it out. You hear how crusty that crust is? Okay, here's what it looks like now that I pulled all of the string off of it. Another thing about sourdough bread is that you cannot cut it early. You have to let it sit for at least an hour and cool off, or it'll get like gummy on the inside. So I'm just gonna set a timer for an hour at least and let this guy cool off before I do anything with it. So I just snapped a cinnamon stick in half, stuck it in the middle. I've also seen people use like almonds and things like that as the stem, but yeah, here it is. It's so like crunchy on the bottom. Ah. Ooh, girl! I'm excited about that.
Cut me a slice and feed me.
I want to put it in my mouth.
And the crust is like
Not bad, not bad.
really crispy.
All right, feed me.
Actually, not that crazy. Why does it smell? Oh, cinnamon, duh.
Mm-hmm.
Can only smell through one nostril.
Mm.
Hashtag COVID. Hashtag lots of what
Good job,
is
babe.
this? I'm confusion.
Want some more bread? Take a bite. Oh, more. Okay. Here, let me pull off a piece for you. You like it?